Welcome to The Explainer. We're diving into the absolute chaos that erupted after the death of one of Mexico's most feared cartel leaders and what it really means for the future of the country. So let's just get right into the immediate aftermath, because this wasn't some quiet takedown of a criminal. This was the spark that set the entire country ablaze. Okay, so the date is February 22nd. Mexican authorities finally locate and kill one of their most wanted targets. You'd think that would be a moment of victory, right? A resolution, but nope. What happened instead was a violent, coordinated wave of retaliation that just sent shockwaves everywhere. And people on the ground, they did not mince words. Miguel Alfonso Meza from a civil rights group called it what it was. He said the goal here was simple: use massive, spectacular violence to scare the hell out of the entire population. And the level of organization was just staggering. We're talking about flaming roadblocks, these so-called narco-bloqueos that shut down major highways. Stores and gas stations were torched. Entire cities were basically brought to a standstill. And they went directly after security forces. It got so bad that flights were canceled and official travel warnings had to be issued. So you have to ask, who was this guy at the center of the storm? Why did his death trigger such an absolutely ferocious response? Well, this whole operation was aimed at the leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, the CJNG. These guys burst onto the scene around 2010 and quickly became one of Mexico's most powerful and most brutal criminal organizations. They're into everything, from drug trafficking to oil theft, and they are notorious for their extreme, very public displays of violence. The man himself was Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, but everybody knew him as El Mencho. This guy literally worked his way up from the bottom, building a massive empire and becoming one of the most wanted men in the entire world, right up until that firefight on February 22nd. And just to give you a sense of how big a deal he was, the U.S. government had a $15 million bounty on his head. That tells you everything you need to know about the scale of his criminal network. Now, taking out El Mencho wasn't just some random event. It's actually a perfect example of a very specific and, honestly, a very controversial security strategy. It's what's known as the kingpin strategy. On paper, the idea is simple. You take out the leader at the top, show everyone you mean business, and disrupt their whole operation. But the reality is so much messier. It's kind of like cutting the head off a hydra. You get immediate, violent blowback, and down the road, the cartel just splinters into new, sometimes even more violent groups. And that's exactly what experts like Angelica Duran-Martinez say. These takedowns look great politically, right? They show the government is doing something. But when you look at the long-term impact on actually stopping crime, as she says, it's very limited. This operation really signals a huge change in policy. After years of President Calderon's all-out military war on cartels, and then President López Obrador's hugs not bullets approach, this feels like a hard swing back to the old kingpin strategy. And it's probably no coincidence that this happened with U.S. intelligence support, given the intense pressure to stop the flow of fentanyl. Okay, so what does this all mean for regular people? I mean, how does this high-level cartel war affect everything from a huge global event like the World Cup to just, daily life? This violence couldn't have come at a worse time, with Mexico about to co-host the World Cup. Suddenly, the whole world started asking the same question. Is it actually safe for teams and hundreds of thousands of fans to even go there? And those weren't just whispers. People were saying it out loud. Michael Ricketts, who's the head of Jamaica's Soccer Federation, was totally honest about it. He said he was very nervous and was basically waiting on FIFA to tell them what to do. But what's fascinating is the perspective from some people on the ground. American expats like Charity Palmentier, who lives right in one of the affected areas, basically described it as a temper tantrum. She said the cartels were just making a statement, and it wasn't a direct threat to civilians or tourists. Of course, officially, everyone is trying to calm things down. The president of FIFA, Gianni Infantino, and Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, have both come out and said loud and clear that they are completely confident that all the security guarantees for the World Cup are solid. So El Mencho is gone, and that has left a huge power vacuum. The big question now is, what happens next? Well, experts are predicting this is going to unfold in 3 stages. First, you'll have an ugly internal power struggle, with El Mencho's top guys fighting each other for control. At the same time, rival cartels are going to see this weakness as a golden opportunity to attack. And through it all, the CJNG itself will keep lashing out with violence to try and prove they're still the baddest guys on the block. And that really gets to the heart of the problem, doesn't it? As one analyst perfectly put it, taking out the CEO doesn't mean the company goes out of business. The massive criminal machine El Mencho built is still running, the drugs are still going to flow, and believe me, there's a long line of violent contenders ready and waiting to take his place on the throne. Which leaves us all grappling with this one fundamental question that Mexico has been facing for decades. Can you really capture your way to peace? Or does the fall of one kingpin just clear the board for the next one to rise?